So I've been reflecting a bit around motivation in practice and what keeps one motivated and how to let go of those difficulties we have that sort of hinder us from our own motivations around the good things that we know in our life that are good for us, and those things that are more difficult for us, or things that we can incline towards that are not so helpful for us. The Buddha talks about these kind of things often with right effort. Those are the ways that we are able to encourage wholesome dhammas, wholesome qualities in our lives, and wholesome qualities in our minds, and then how we learn how to sustain those qualities. And it also, the Buddha talks about how we can, when we find that there are unwholesome qualities, we know how to prevent them from arising in our mind. And when they do arise in the mind, we know how to dispel them and to keep them at bay. So it's both that encouraging of the good and our ability to prevent the unwholesome, the negative. The Buddha also talks about certain qualities that we can have in our practice, that there are elements of our practice where we can notice that there are things that are quite beneficial for us, and we like doing them. We have a preference for doing them. We enjoy doing those things. But there are also those things that we know are a benefit for us, but they're difficult for us to do. They're hard to encourage within our own experience. And so, we know they have that benefit, but it's hard to get the motivation to encourage them in ourselves. Those actions of body, speech, and mind that are helpful for us. And then on the flip side, there are those things that we know are unbeneficial for us, have a negative result. And for some of those things, we don't really like doing them. We don't, we don't actually do those things. So we might find that poison oak is a very unpleasant thing to experience. But we don't have a problem with not picking up poison oak leaves and rubbing them all over our bodies. So that's not so difficult for us to prevent ourselves from doing. So we don't like doing it, and the result is not good. But then there are those things where the result is not good for us, but we enjoy doing it. We enjoy doing those activities that we know are unbeneficial for us. A lot of people complain these days about their activities with their screens, their devices. I often like the fact that these things are, like cell phones, smartphones are called devices because they're very close to vices. It's just a couple of letters away. And anyway, these things can be quite enjoyable for us to partake in, but yet they can have detrimental effects on us, negative effects. But they're very hard for us to prevent ourselves from partaking in because we enjoy them so much. So I've mentioned these four things. It might become very obvious to you that those things that have a negative result for us and that we don't like doing, or they're not really a problem for us, we don't have to do anything about them. we don't like doing it, have a negative result, well, they're not going to really come up for us very much. And then those things that have a beneficial result that we like doing, again, we don't have any problem. There's no motivation in needing to do those things. This could be like something like doing yoga, and we enjoy doing it. It's not difficult to motivate ourselves. So we do something like that. Other people, they might see there's a benefit in doing something like yoga, but it's very hard for them to motivate themselves. But for those things that we really like doing and have a benefit, then we don't have to really put much energy into that at all. There's no need. But it is helpful to note what is beneficial and unbeneficial for us. And even if it's easy sometimes for us to do those things, we might prefer them or like them, it's still good for us to note that it was helpful, sort of give ourselves a pat on the back, or to enjoy that preference when it's beneficial, or to know that it's easy for us to relinquish something or not. It'd be more of know what's not good for us and then not do it because we're not really interested. But it's these two other qualities that are helpful to be extremely aware of every day of our lives, every hour, every minute if we can. Those things that are beneficial for us but we don't like doing them, and those things that are unbeneficial, have a detrimental result, but we like doing them. And basically, our Dhamma practice comes down to those two things. Because it's our preferences that often get in the way of whether we receive a benefit from something or it's more of a danger for us. And so most of our practice, I find, is just learning how to motivate ourselves in those two directions. To motivate ourselves to not do those things that are unbeneficial, and to motivate ourselves to do those things that are difficult for us to do that are a benefit. So for all of us, I can ask you what are these things? What are these things for you that are personally difficult? What are the things in your lives that are a benefit for you, but they're very difficult for you to motivate yourself? And sometimes tricky to figure out how to do so, how to do something like that. Often for us it's drawing a specific boundary, but how to do that sometimes is very difficult because it comes from developing good habits that lead us in a good direction. And eventually when we develop habits, even if they're for us to do things that are difficult for us, when we do them repetitively, they take a lot less energy in our mind to motivate ourselves, and we're able to stay with them. The encouragement that we need to give ourselves is less and less, and we find that it becomes easy, possibly not enjoyable, but much easier for us to do. And so in our spiritual life, this is probably one of the most important elements to work on. In fact, I can see no other thing that's more beneficial than this, because the nature of our own motivation and how we deal with this within ourselves is through knowing those two qualities of what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. And if we know what's wholesome for us, if we discern that, then that's where wisdom comes from. It's for those people that are confused about those qualities, that don't understand them, that aren't sure, well, what's good for me? I don't know what's good for me. I'm not really sure. I don't know what's bad for me. That's from a place where panya doesn't exist. Like somebody who takes drugs or alcohol and they keep having negative effects, but they continue to do it. And for some of those people, they might see the harmful effects. Others might just think, it doesn't matter. Or they don't see them at all. So without that, then we can't even have a motivation to do anything. So the first is to really discern what is helpful, what's beneficial, or what is a detriment, what is harmful to us. And once we know those two things and we figure them out, we keep guiding our mind in that direction, then we can understand, well, how do I motivate myself when I don't want to do those things that are beneficial for me, and how do I motivate myself when I do want to do those things that keep harming myself. And if you've really figured this out, honed it down to a skill in one's life, then there is really nothing one can't do. So for a lot of people, they ask about, well, how do I, this comes up a lot in terms of just the formal side of practice. How do I motivate myself to meditate? It's much easier to kind of do all of the things that are that I kind of like doing, or I just keep myself busy, or there's so much I have to do, there's no time. But that's often not the truth. The fact is we often are avoiding it, or avoiding encouraging our mind in terms of spending some time on the cushion, or doing some walking meditation. There's the old saying we've heard that the only people will often say, I had a really bad sitting, my mind was distracted. But that's actually not true, is it? It's not necessarily a bad sit when we spend a whole hour just thinking. So I quite enjoy that statement, that the only bad sit you had is the one you didn't do. So motivating ourselves to just sit on the cushion, motivating ourselves to get out on the walking path, or do standing meditation, whatever it is, when we want to take that time for internal solitude, a sense of quieting the mind, being quiet with ourselves. And just that motivation to do that, and then spending some time with the mind, cultivating samadhi, cultivating concentration, or bringing about a sense of good qualities within the mind. That's what's most important, because eventually it starts to click that this is a benefit, and we see the benefit, and we could be very much motivated by that. So the key is just encouraging ourselves. How do I do this thing that at times I just don't want to do? So Ajahn Chah often talked about, his very short statement on that was, when you don't want to meditate, you meditate. When you do want to meditate, you meditate. So it's just that kind of motivation we can have in our mind. And mostly where I find this motivation comes from is an internal dialogue. It's really the way that we talk to ourselves that gets us to be motivated towards those things that we either, of course, want to do, that don't want to do that's a benefit, or those things that we have to give up because we like doing them, but they're harmful for us. And so this takes the time to develop that skill, and how do we speak to ourselves? How do we motivate ourselves? What do we say to ourselves? Often we need to, as the Buddha teaches us, think about the drawbacks of not doing something that's a benefit for us. We can list them. Oh, when I don't do this, I have a lot more anger in my mind, or when if I don't meditate, then it's I can get snappy with other people and short-tempered, or I feel unclear and just scattered. And we can remind ourselves, oh, I really enjoy that peaceful sense. And we might say to ourselves sometimes, oh, well, but I just think all the time, it's not really that much of a benefit, it's just a waste of time for me. But for someone who says that, they're not really seeing even the benefit of just motivating ourselves towards peace. There's a greatness that comes out of that, a goodness that we can see within our own mind. But it's the qualities of renunciation that can be difficult for us at times when we see the benefit. So yesterday I was. These are often just seeing certain qualities that we have in our minds that are unbeneficial for us, but we keep going in that direction. We keep moving in that direction. So I would just give an example of this yesterday. That it was I think it was yesterday, that's right. We had a concrete pour, and it was the day after Wampa. We got up, several of us got up around 4:30 or earlier, 4 in the morning, and then came down to the cloister, and we got together and we started working on a concrete pour. And I could see that the thing that happened was it didn't go as I had planned, which it never does it? Especially something like that. But actually anything never goes according to plan. How could it? Because no matter what we plan, there's always some minutia that's always going to be different. And so as we expect this, then we can work with that and just see how it's not really a benefit to plan so much, or to put our heart into those plans, or to at least see that something's going to be completely different, disappointing, difficult to deal with. And yet we can motivate ourselves in those situations and say, well, that's what the Dhamma is for, that's what the practice is for understanding, for learning about the fact that if it was all going to work out perfectly, then there really isn't any reason for this practice at all. Wouldn't make sense. It's not how the world works. And so just starting out with that sense of how we're thinking about something that's going to occur, it's very helpful for us. We can relinquish that holding on to plans and holding on how something should be. Anyway, the person who was dealing with the concrete pumping was late by about 45 minutes. It got lost. Then the pump didn't work. Concrete truck came late, and then we couldn't get the concrete up. And all of a sudden it started working, and that was it. It was quite a fast-paced job. There wasn't a lot of us working together very easily and well. And yet when the job was done, I saw the bill from one of the people we employed, and I thought, oh, that doesn't seem fair. We got charged for this that was extra, and that, and charges for the time he was lost. And I signed the bill anyway because I didn't feel it was really exactly the correct thing to do, was to argue or to get into a discussion about it. It was already made up anyway, the bill, for the hours and everything that occurred. But I could see in my own mind that I couldn't let go of it, that there was something, I wanted to say something, either call out the manager of the company or the owner, and and say, well, this, everything was okay with the work. It turned out okay, but I think we were overcharged for this. And so I really had to work in my own mind to see that, oh yeah, this is a tendency. I wasn't able to let go of this. And so I spoke to other people. What should I do? Should I call them? Should I not? And yet I knew the benefit was just to let go of it right there. There's a fair amount of money being spent, and this was squabbling over relatively a small amount compared to the bigger picture. But it was that sense of unfairness that I couldn't let go of. I told the guy to meet me in a certain place. He didn't meet us there. He got himself lost. He was late to begin with. On and on the mind goes. Blaming situation, there should be justice. And yet in the back of my mind I knew, well, just letting go of this will be so much more of a benefit. And it will increase the possibilities in the future of being able to let go of these things more quickly. So we can think of these things for ourselves, that when we're able to just say, no, that's it, I'm letting go of this, I'm not going to continue on this line of thinking. And when it comes up, then we're very clear with ourselves. We know that it's a detriment for us to continue on. And so it often can be a lot easier when we draw that boundary, when we make that decision to let go. But of course I have to see that benefit to begin with. I have to see that this is not going to be helpful. The proliferation around something, the compulsion to continue thinking about it, the inability to let it go. And it's very easy, for myself, that's a tendency that I can see. It's a defilement that I can see, this kind of repetitive thinking about trying to figure out what is the best way to move forward with something, and knowing that the best way to move forward is just to let it go. And yet the mind doesn't want to do that. And so that internal dialogue is very important in this case. It's very important to be able to talk to ourselves and say, actually, this isn't helpful to keep thinking about this. And sure, there are wrongs in the world, there are things that are problems, and what's it really going to do to talk to a manager about this? Is it really going to be a benefit? And so we can kind of argue with ourselves, well, of course it is. Yeah, it's going to help out their company, and all feel justified, and well, there goes the plans of the perfect situation, the good conversation. It's likely not going to happen that way. But what happens when I let go? Proliferation stops. The endless cycle of me and mine, and my views, my opinions, justice, righting wrongs. All of that takes so much energy. And I can believe that it's a benefit for me. I can believe that, when I sing the song of justice, when I correct things, when I make things right, when I have that conversation, set things straight. But this is just a view, and it's as easy to talk myself into that view, and much more difficult to talk myself, no, it's not going to work out, because the mind is holding on. It's squeezing at that view. There's pressure to keep proliferating, to keep the story going. So when we figure out how to talk to ourselves about these things, when we figure out how to let go, what our motivating ourselves is, then it can be an enormous skill. That's it's like having a tool belt on you, where you have all the tools you need. You don't need to go searching for them; they're right there. And you don't need to remember what the right tool is to use, because you have it. That's your skill set. And so figuring out how to talk to ourselves in these situations, talk ourselves out of what is a detriment to us is just incredibly helpful on the path. You can think about this with any challenges you might have in the monastic life. Some of the monks, samaners, anagarkas will talk about the fact that they've cut out so much sensuality, and then the food becomes very difficult. You go in, and as much as you try to maintain mindfulness, you come out and you're like, wow, this bowl must weigh like 5 or 6 pounds now. How did that happen? I started with such a motivation to take the right amount, or a motivation to take the right things, the things that I know that are helpful for me, and on the mind goes. But in a situation like that, the Buddha talks about reflecting before, during, and after. He talks about that with speech, but you can apply that with any kind of activity. Really, really questioning, is your mind set up to deal with the defilements as they're arising in a particular situation? And you can ask yourself, before that happens, are you ready? Are you present? And then while it's happening, while you're engaging in activity, you're asking yourself, is this still wholesome? Is it beneficial? And when it's not, it can be very difficult to let go, but if you're aware of that while it's happening, it's just so much easier. And then if you've developed these skills of how to talk to yourself, no, this isn't the right thing to take, this isn't, or you might see something, let's say like with food, you say, oh, this is the favorite thing I have, oh, I'm so happy they made this, or whatever it might be. I don't see that very often. I'm going to take more of that. And this comes up. It's just a frequent possibility that this might arise. And then you might say to yourself, well, if I take more, then this is going to be increasing my greed. If I take less, then I increase my sense of generosity, sense of renunciation, and that would be good for me, that would be helpful. And sometimes it's very difficult because these actions there's a bit of pressure, something like taking food. As a monastic, you're kind of trying to move quickly. But it's still a skill that can be used. What's the benefit? What's helpful here? We can think about this with our how we take care of our cabins, our robes. So like with our robes, we often make our own robes. Our first set of 3 robes we're required to make if we want to ordain. And then often we'll be repairing them. But it's possible to become lazy with that and not put those repairs in. Or if we have a cabin, the same thing, even with that, our kutis, our huts. We can see something's wrong, but it's just my temporary dwelling. I'll move somewhere else later. Don't have to take care of that or fix that or tell anybody about that. But we can ask ourselves, what's the benefit of having that attitude in our own mind? Because that will translate into how we meditate. It's just the lazy mind, the mind of cutting corners. And so if we're not aware of the fact that certain attitudes that we're carrying are actually a great detriment to us, then unfortunately they can weigh upon us over the years and become stronger and stronger. And we don't see them at all. We just act out of what we think is the thing that I like to do. I like doing it, so it can't be bad because I like it. So living as monastics in a monastery, it can be easy. We can say that to ourselves around the schedule. I don't like this schedule. I wish it was more like this. I wish it was more like that. It's one of the more common complaints that comes up in the mind. But sometimes, as Ajahn Cunda was encouraging in his talk recently, he was talking about doing those things that are difficult to do, but you do them. You just go forward with them. And you can see in your own mind when you've really honed that in, the potential that has. Because there's that resistance, and you know, well, this actually would be beneficial for me to do. I don't want to do it. And for some of us, we need to discern what's benefit and what's not. So a perfect example of this is the late night sitting, the vigil that we have once a week. And there are some monks who, whenever it's optional, like myself, I'll take that option. And actually, when it's not optional, I still take that option. Because over time, I found it just wasn't helpful for me. But one of the benefits that can be had, even if we see like, well, I don't feel very healthy in body or mind afterwards, you can see that sense of doing something that's difficult to do, even just doing that, moving forward with that also can have a benefit. So we can see that there are some benefits gained in a situation where there might be some other detriments. But with that quality, I can see, and I very much admire those monks who continue that practice, who tend to do the all-night vigils. In a way, you have to psych yourself up. You have to get ready for it and prepare yourself, because the tendency can be, as the night's wearing on, it's just, this isn't worth it. This is exhausting, this is difficult, this is painful. And so for me, seeing the monks who consistently do it over and over again, I don't think when I see them, oh, it's just easy for them, that's why they do it, or they like it, or they like torturing themselves, or whatever it might be. It's more like, oh yeah, that's quite beautiful behavior. Admirable behavior. And so this kind of thing can come up with, we're doing these work periods that are much more difficult this year. I was just talking to a former monk who's coming back here in about 6 weeks, former Gambiro, Rob Hayes, and we were talking about the work we're doing, and I said, yeah, it's almost always in the morning. We're not really doing afternoon work much at all, except for, of course, the activities that we tend to do in our monastic life, but or certain responsibilities we have. But I said, yeah, in the morning, it's actually, some of it's pretty heavy labor. And I said, yeah, I think for the Black Rocks, we moved 700 concrete bags, and those people were able-bodied. They were still very tired, and it was difficult work. It wasn't all at once, and it took place over several days, several times that we did it, but it's a lot, 760-pound concrete bags. So what happens when the mind is complaining, and, oh, this is too much, and this isn't what I signed up for, I can't do this, not another day, or I won't do this again. What is the attitude we have towards those thoughts? Are they helpful for us? Do they benefit us? And often what happens in these situations, or any situations in our lives, is that we explode them into the rest of our entire existence. Life is awful. I'm not going to be able to deal with this. I can't deal with this. This is too much. And we start to fight, and with this sense of this is reality. This is how it is. Work periods in the morning, impossible work periods for infinity. And it can feel like that. It can weigh on the mind like that. I won't do this. I can't do this. This is too much. These other people aren't working, or they're not working as hard as me. And we start to disparage others. And these are all activities of the mind that we need to see. Like, what's the benefit here? And how can I calmly talk myself out of it? This is just difficult today. This is difficult right now. I don't even know what the afternoon's going to be like, or maybe this will be the best actual activity of the day. Who knows? Might be in the hospital in a couple hours. Probably because of this work. Well, oh, whoops. No, it's okay. So we try to really take care of the mind, take care of as Ajahn Cunda was talking about this morning, mindfulness will bring us happiness. It's helpful for us, it's a benefit. Really watching our mind, having an awareness of the mind. But that requires this encouragement, this goodness, this encouragement towards goodness, encouragement towards the wholesome. And we keep working on that. No matter what the odds are, no matter what the difficulties are, trying to remember that the difficult sit, the difficult experience we had is just that. There is no need to project it into the future. There is no need to believe that we're going to be in the same mood now that we have within us, a couple hours later, 30 minutes later. We can often be in situations with people where we just think, God, this guy, oh man, I cannot stand this other person. And we can hold that attitude for days, weeks, months, even years. Be that same person. Often that person is ourselves, because that's what we hold that same attitude towards. So again, we're learning that skill of how to motivate ourselves. We think about somebody else who we have difficulties with. We think about their own suffering, their own dukkha. We try to bring up their good qualities. We remind ourselves of those. And we keep bringing up this skill of what is the correct way for us to keep ourselves on track towards the wholesome, motivating ourselves, even when we don't want to, when we want to fall easily into complaining, fall easily into those patterns, those habits that we just like doing so much that don't benefit us. We know if we extend these patterns out for the rest of our life, they're gonna be very harmful, and they definitely won't lead towards liberation. And of course, one of the things that's important in this kind of motivation is to be very kind to ourselves. Because it's easy to sometimes motivate ourselves based on anger, aversion. And I find this is probably the best way to talk about how the Buddha encouraged us not to torture ourselves. The middle way is not towards indulgence, nor is it towards as the Buddha was talking about, like mortification, torture. And while we do that sometimes in our physical actions, it's often in the mind that we're torturing ourselves. You idiot, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? I can't believe you said that. That was just so stupid. When are you going to get it right? Why do you have to keep making all these mistakes? In the Thai tradition, that voice is often personified. It's like the voice of the defilements. And some of the monks in the Thai forest tradition will personify them and speak to them like, well, there it is, just desire. When have you ever helped me out? You're there, constantly encourage me towards those things that I don't want to, aren't going to be a benefit for me. They're unhelpful. You keep talking me into it over and over again. When have you really helped me? You've got me into trouble over and over again. So coaxing, so easy to listen to. And yet it's one problem after another if I listen to you. So whatever it is, whatever beneficial way we figure out is to speak to ourselves, to motivate ourselves towards those things that are difficult for us to do, but we know are a benefit, then we keep moving in that direction. And we find how we can talk ourselves into relinquishing those things that are a detriment. But we're so tempted by them. That's these incredible skills that I find are so important in our practice. So these are some encouragements just to reflect upon over these days and nights that are relentlessly passing, and encourage yourselves in understanding the Dhamma and benefiting from it, and honing in on those ways, those experiments you can take with learning these skills of really how to motivate yourself in your own internal speech or internal dialogue, so that you can really gain a great benefit from the Dhamma and eventually be released from all suffering. You want